we're going to look at the composition of two functions. So first, you've hopefully seen this, the f of g of x. This is another way to say that same thing, f of g of x. That's like a little bitty o. Sometimes we call it fog, F-O-G, right? F of g of x. So for these questions, we're going to go two directions. So notice we have P and Q. So this is Q of P of 3. This one is P of Q of 3. So we're going to go ahead and rewrite it, and we're going to start in the middle, right? On the inside. So Q of P of 3 is the same thing as Q of P of 3. So we're going to start on the inside and find P of 3 first. So to find P of 3, we go into P and replace the x's with 3's. So negative 2 times 3 minus 2. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6, minus 2 is negative 8. But that's just an intermediate answer. It's not the answer that they're looking for because we want Q of P of 3. So we're going to replace this P of 3 with its value, which is negative 8. And so now we're looking for Q of negative 8. So I go into Q and replace my x with a negative 8. So I have negative 8 squared, which is a positive 64. So my answer for Q of P of 3 is 64. The negative 8, this is not an answer. This is the answer. The second part of this question asks for P of Q of 3. So that means P of Q of 3. So notice we're just going the other direction. So we will start by finding Q of 3. So Q of 3, I go into Q and replace my x with a 3. So it's 3 squared, which is 9. Now I want to find P of 9, right? Because that's what Q of 3 is, right? I just replaced the Q of 3 with its value, which is 9. So finding P of 9, I go into P and replace every x with a 9. So negative 2 times 9 minus 2. Negative 2 times 9 is negative 18, minus 2 is negative 20. So my two answers here are Q of P of 3 is 64. P of Q of 3 is negative 20. Looking at another one, we're going to do the same thing. So the first one asks me for U of W of negative 1. So remember this rewrites as U of W of negative 1. You don't have to rewrite it, but sometimes I think it's helpful. And so the first thing that we are going to do is find W of negative 1. And W of negative 1, I go into W and replace all my x's with negative 1. Is negative 2 times negative 1 plus 4. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2 plus 4 is 6. Now I'm going to replace the W of negative 1 with its value, which is 6. So I'm looking for U of 6, which means I go into U and replace all the x's with a 6. So negative 4 times 6 is negative 24. So my value for U of W of negative 1 is negative 24. That's my answer. Now to look at W of U of negative 1. So again, that's W of U, can't write a U, of negative 1. So we start with the inside, and we're looking for u of negative 1. And that means I go into u and replace every x with a negative 1. So I have negative 4 times negative 1, which is a positive 4. Now I'm looking for w of u of negative 1, which is 4. So I'm going to replace this with a 4. So I'm looking for w of 4. I go into w and replace all my x's with a 4. So negative 2 times 4 plus 4. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8, plus 4 is negative 4. So w of u of negative 1 is a negative 4. Just be sure when you do this in ALEKS that you don't, it's going to ask you both of these. So be sure that you don't use this intermediate answer for all the way to the end for your first one, then all the way to the end for your second one.